Hold
Is it
please.
okay?
Wait, ma'am.
Often when I am doing a lecture or workshop, I use the microphone to do the heart beat. Love dub, love dub, love dub, love dub. This is what we learn to listen to as physicians in training, the heartbeat. And I'm Jean Shinoda Bowen, and with me up here is Pam Rajput from this area. Pam will introduce the wide number of things that she does, but I know that she's the head of a gender studies group. I know she's been involved with gender and women and the government level, and I know her from going to New York to the UN Commission on Status of Women meetings year after year, and year after year, Pam has gone also, and that's where we have met. And it's really nice to meet you again here in your home country. And the idea of this presentation is based on the buttons that you see all around. 5WCW. The fourth one was in Beijing in 1995. And I wrote to tell you a little bit about how I got involved in this, because I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm practicing psychiatrist and Jungian analyst in private practice. I get involved with things because I am moved by certain causes, and I have ever since I've been quite a bit younger. And one of the things I was involved with was the anti-nuclear proliferation movement. And there we learned about the story of the 100th monkey. And it was based on a theoretical biologist understanding of how species learned something new, and once it was really learned, it became innate in that species. And because of that idea of the morphic field and the allegorical story about how monkeys learned a certain new thing off the shore of Japan, and how it was that the anti-nuclear activists who were really ridiculed, you think you can stop the superpower race? And they told themselves the story of the 100th monkey, that when you reach a certain point of critical mass, tipping point, then what you wanted to achieve would happen. Up until that point, you might not see it happening at all. So this was a story that moved people to keep on keeping on, to often doing storefront activist groups, because it was the most important thing for them. And I came to their organization, learned something about that, was moved by the principle behind it, and the sense that if you felt this was the only important issue in the whole world that mattered, because we would otherwise be destroyed by the nuclear arms race, and then you realize that people may laugh at you, but if there's going to be the 100th monkey, which is a tipping point, there has to be the 14th monkey, and the 18th monkey, and the 19th monkey, etc., etc. So my story of how relevant it became was writing a book called The Millionth Circle. And it utilizes the same principle of critical mass tipping point, either through the archetypal level, because that's my work as a Jungian analyst, the archetypal level, where when you have been, because we are connected at that level, if enough of us change an attitude or a perception or an action, it does get instinctively part of what becomes a pattern that's available to other members of the human species. So I thought about that. I thought about how the women's movement changed my world, and it appeared to be just women talking to each other. It was the consciousness raising groups of the late 60s and early 70s. Just women talking to each other, changing how women were treated after that, to the Title IX kinds of things, the things that happened in the United States in the 70s, which was called the decade of the women's movement, begun by women in groups talking and telling the truth of their own lives and learning from each other. So what if you then had circles with a spiritual center? What if the circles could support the women in them to become, in a sense, who they were meant to be, and to be truth tellers, and to be connected with one another, and to support each other to do whatever it was that was truly meaningful. And that led me to write the book called The Million Circle, How to Change Ourselves and the World. And I had gone to a meeting at Grace Cathedral. I had heard, I was thinking of the 100th monkey. I heard the story and while I was in that place of thinking about the effect of women being in circles, and the sort of sense of 100th monkey, millionth circle, what if the metaphoric millionth circle would be the one that would bring balance to humanity? What if the metaphoric millionth circle, by supporting the feminine principle in men and women, and the women's agenda, mother's agenda, the sense of sisterhood, what if women meeting in circles, meeting together, telling the truth of their lives and the meaning of their lives and what it was that they were moved to do, and what if they got support from each other to do exactly that? And out of this came this book. The thesis of it was easy to write. It would be a pamphlet. And then, for the first time, I wrote a book that I've ever written, a book that had a how-to element in it. Because then the question was, well, how do you start a circle? And what are the problems in a circle? And what is a circle with a sacred center anyway? And I found myself writing a book that looks like, the how-to part looks like verse. Because of a couple of fortuitous accidents that led me to start writing the first paragraph on the how-to without moving the cursor to the far left. This book was then taken to the Parliament of World Religions, where some women there who were involved with the United Nations, thought that they should help organize something that they would call the Million Circle Initiative if I would allow them to use the title of the book. And they talked about it in Geneva, and then I got a call from a woman who actually just lived up the road, so to speak, about 25 to 30 miles from where I live. And she told me how this book had influenced this group, how it had been discussed in Geneva, and how they wanted to have an organizing meeting to form a Million Circle Initiative. Would I let them use the title of the book, and would I come to the first organizing meeting? And that's how I became involved with this group of women who have been now meeting over the past, this was in 2001, and there has been a Million Circle organization ever since then of conveners who convene circles, who hold the mother circle of the Million Circle as with daughter circles all over. And what we did together was then come to the United Nations. Now, the last time I was interested in the United Nations was when I was in high school, and we went to the Model UN. Now I was going to the UN with this contingent of women who wanted to introduce circles to the Commission on the Status of Women, to the NGOs connected with women, because Women don't like to do the stand alone heroic kind of thing. Women are much more supported by each other and learn from each other, and then can go, if you have to handle something by yourself, you know that your circle has your back. And if you also have a circle with a sacred center, the possibility is that they will meditate on it, they will pray for you, they will visualize you doing it, and you also invite the invisible world to support what it is you are doing. So, at the United Nations, introducing circle concepts in parallel events, which we did, and learning for me that there would not be another world conference on women ever. I had expected, since this was 2002 by now, that of course there should be one in 2005 or 2010, but oh no, there wasn't going to be one in 2005 or 2010 or ever, because you women had had your conference, and out of this conference had come the Beijing Platform for Action, which was truly an amazingly positive document that, if implemented, would make a huge difference to women all over the world. So that was my beginning, becoming an activist on behalf of the 5th Women's World Conference, because it seemed so right to me to have one. The 4th one was held at a time when the internet existed as a kind of esoteric kind of a thing. Now it was growing to what it is now. It's like there are, the internet connects women and men all over the world. So if you had a 5WCW, whoever came from wherever you came from could report back, could film it, could do live shots of what's going on all over the world. You could have small satellite conferences that echoed what was being learned. It would be an amazing, amazing possibility to support women, to support each other, to learn from each other, and to change the world. And because I believed it, and because I was moved by it, I was now an activist. And that's what I have been doing since 2002. In 2012, it appeared like it might actually happen when the Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly published a joint statement that it was high time that there was one. And you can see the documents on the button. You'll see that in white, the website 5wcw.org. And on that's an archival site. Documents, statements, all kinds of information you can find on that site. So that began this effort to move the UN to having a 5th Women's World Conference. And the inspiration was one of the idea of how the world really does get changed, because I was around in the 60s and 70s, and I really did see how when a critical number of women start to articulate and believe in equality, in what they stood for, feminism started to really, really move. And then it got pushed back. And feminism got to be a bad word. And all these young women entered colleges and things that they didn't enter before, into fields that they had not entered before because of the women's movement. And they would say, I can do anything I want, but I'm not a feminist, because it had become a dirty word. It had gotten pushed back. And now we are at the beginning of a potential new era that it began, there were glimmers of it, and glimmers of it in India. When Eve Ensler did 1 Billion Rising, and women took to the streets to dance their protests, there were more women dancing in the streets of India than any other place in the world. And then came the women's marches on the day after inauguration of President Trump. And so many of us responded to the call. There was a sort of a sense of the word went out on the internet, and there was going to be a march in Washington, and many of us felt like we needed to be there. And then other women started marches all over the country of the United States, and then in the world. So I think there was something like 600 to 700 marches all over the world, women's marches on the 21st of January 21st, 2017. And most recently there has been the Me Too movement, where women who have been often victimized in many different ways, and because they were shamed by it and felt if that, and this is psychologically true, sometimes if you don't have somebody to witness and tell you differently, you feel if somebody treated you badly, you must be bad. This is what happens to kids. If your parents or the next door neighbor or somebody beats you or ridicules you or sexually uses you and you feel bad inside, you figure you must have deserved it. You're a kid and you'll keep the secret. And what happened with the Me Too movement was, again, amazing. Women started to share their experiences, and as each one did, another one would say, me too. If you can speak up and talk, I can too. And then they found out when they talked about what happened to them and were supported, that they freed a part of themselves, as psychologically you would. If you hold something inside yourself that you feel makes you inferior, makes you lesser, makes you feel ashamed, you suppress it. It takes a lot of psychic energy to do that, and you're prone to get depressed. Well, you free that up, you share it, you find that you're supported, you find that you find your voice. This is called empowerment. This is the power of speaking the truth. And we watched that happen just recently. So now the sense is feminism, for example, as a word, last year was the most looked up word in the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Feminism now is not a dirty word. It's a powerful word. Again, it's a word that means something about the tide is rising. And if we had a Biz Women's World Conference, and it takes 3 years from the time of the UN General Assembly votes to have one, which is why a date like 2022 is one that there's enough time to get it through the General Assembly. It's enough time for, and why I'm here really in India is because it needs to come. The Modi government needs to be influenced by the women that are here. And this is a remarkable country to have it in. It's the largest democracy in the world. Women took to the streets after the rape of the college student on the bus in 2012. The laws were again brought up against rape. Things are moving here, and this country makes it pretty easy to get a visa to come, which so many other countries in the world do not. So the idea of why I'm here personally is to get the word out, to have some of you, some others here, take up the idea and what I call as an assignment, that just as I felt I needed to speak up for this because it moved me to do so, just as you might have gone on a march feeling like this is something that you should do. Well, that is an inside of you, inside responding to a call. And it's part of becoming and living your own path. It's part of being who you are, knowing this is meaningful because of who you are. One is because you're a woman, of course. But also, when it's about empowerment and equality, it's because you also know something about being on the other end of it. The sense is that a Fifth Women's World Conference that would have this as it would be a major step in the direction of changing humanity to becoming equal men and women in making major decisions for everybody. So I wrote about how, first of all, is it meaningful to you personally? And then what I'm doing here and what many of you will find when you have a good cause and you have good others with it is it's fun. It's fun to be challenged and to grow to do something that you haven't done before and to grow. Because growing is fun, actually. It's also fun to be with others who share your values. And finally, the thing that is most important and why I did the heartbeat at the beginning is that it needs to be motivated by love. Because it's the only energy there is that the more you give away, the more you have, the more there is in the other person and in the world. And when a movement is motivated by love and is effective, it's a powerful force. So these are the reasons for thinking about each person has to decide from inside out, is this for me to do? Is this my assignment? Am I moved to do this next step? Every woman who stepped up to do Me Too took it on herself. So it does take, again, heart. The word courage comes from the French word for heart. It takes courage to stretch, to do something you haven't done before, to speak about yourself as you've never spoken before, and to find that you end up being a role model for someone else. It's remarkable. So I wrote the book The Million Circle, and it did what it's been doing. And then in another one called The Stonecutters, and one called Moving Towards the Million Circle, or Energizing the Global Women's Movement, I retell a story that is, I'd like you to think about if you are involved in any form of activism, because it is the deeper sense of what are you really doing when you're doing it. And the story of the stonecutters are very simple. A man comes and sees these stonecutters out of a quarry making these very large blocks of stone, making them square. And he asks the first stonecutter, what are you doing? And, he should have blown off, so it's obviously I'm making this, I'm squaring off this block, it's obvious. And he goes to the second one and he asks, what are you doing? And the second man says, I'm creating this block to make a wall. And he goes to the third one, who's doing the very same thing, and he asks, what are you doing? And he says, I am helping to build a cathedral that will last 1,000 years. Each person is doing the very same thing, but it makes a tremendous difference if what you do has behind it an intention that what you are doing is contributing to some bigger, larger cause. And if you form a circle that supports you and supports your dreams, it's a good thing. It's like a consciousness raising group, only it has a spiritual quality to it as well. Okay, it's really good to be in a group. And so what are you doing? I'm in a group. What else might you be doing? Well, we're empowering each other to be true to ourselves. We're supporting one another. And then lastly, what are you really doing? Well, I'm contributing to the Million Circle, the one that, when it happens, will change the world. And that's why I'm out here being a seed carrier for the whole idea of the Million Circle, and what a difference it would make to have the Fifth Women's World Conference with a concept of women in circles supporting each other to speak the truth where they are, to do what they're capable of doing, and it went all over the world. So it's a good cause. It's meaningful, it's fun, and it is motivated by love. And here's Pam, who, when I was at the UN, I organized a panel called We Rise, We Rise, We Rise Together. and I had each speaker was doing his or her thing, doing a cause. And the question was, how would a Fifth Women's World Conference help the cause that was a source of meaning and a mission? How would a Fifth Women's World Conference make a difference? And Pam spoke so eloquently about what a difference it would make and why it should be in India.
Thank you, Jean and friends. Let me first thank Jean for organizing this panel and inviting me to be co-panelists. We also thank the organizers of this World Economic Forum who accommodated our request to be here. And I must say that I have no words to express my appreciation about the perseverance of Dr. Jean Bolan, who has been consistently for now quite some years, I can say, working for this whole idea of the Fifth World Conference on Women. As she was speaking, I was reminiscent of my days, right? I have 10 to 12 minutes to speak. Session is over, right? I hope you will bear with us, those who are sitting here, and they will sit through. So I said I was being reminiscent of my days from Nairobi onwards. Before going to Nairobi, we held in our university a conference of women's studies. There were about 510 women participants from different parts of the country. And the theme was women, struggles and movements. And it was thereafter that we went to Nairobi. But Nairobi did not have that kind of an excitement as it was there in Beijing. Those who have not been to Beijing conference, I would like to take 1 minute and talk about the Beijing conference also. One was that Beijing conference was organized in a very, very scientific manner, conscientious manner. There were, even within India, we had number of consultations or issue-based consultations. And then there were regional consultations. And it is after that that those 12 critical areas which we find in the Beijing Platform for Action, they were determined that these are the areas in which we must have the commitments from the community. And interesting, of course, is prior to the Beijing conference, we had the NGO forum at Huaru, which is a place away from the main Beijing conference. And I'm sure some other time, these are the things we also need to document, right? Those who have been their own experiences. As she's saying, at that time, feminism was a bad word. But what is interesting also is, which is relevant today, is that is the period when this whole development paradigm of globalization, neoliberalism begins. And two interesting things of the Beijing platform, Beijing conference I shared, and then I moved to why women's Fifth World Conference on Women. One I remember distinctly was at the official site of the Beijing conference. Women were marching, in the area against multinationals, right? But lo and behold, in a country like China, which had been a communist country against multinationals at that time, there was the presence of McDonald on the site. Right? And interestingly, I was also one of those who was marching. And as we were marching, what do we notice? There was a huge queue of women standing outside McDonald's to buy stuff to eat for the lunch. That's one, the paradoxes of this that we have. And the other is, that is one conference where you could feel how women could be assertive to the extent of being aggressive also. In the morning one day, the NGO briefing was going on, and the president of the World Bank, who had been newly elected at that time, was present in the venue to address. And I still distinctly remember one of the young women from, I'm repeating the word young woman, at that time. She got up from the audience, from Africa, one of the African countries. She got up and she said, Mr. President, I want to ask you a question. And so she narrated this, that how the World Bank is trying to create poverty, right, through this whole structural adjustment program, this. And the president was, of course, he said, look here, I have just joined. Give me time. And then she said, well, okay, Mr. President, then I want to have a date with you. Right? I want to have a date with you to ask you after 2 years what has been done. So that is the kind of zeal, that is the kind of the assertiveness of the ideas and the boldness of the women who in that whole gathering could question for that matter. Having said that, the question that arises is that in a short duration of 20 years, from 75 to 95, we had 4 conferences, right? 75 first, 80 second, 85 third, and 95 fourth. Thereafter, the full stop. So the question that is before us today, and that's what we are talking about. Do we have the question, or do we have the full stop? Is the Beijing the ultimate? Everything recognized, everything realized for everyone? Or there are certain things which were missed out there? There were certain sections of people who were missed out over there? Many things. So it is in that context, friends, that the whole idea of, the Fifth World Conference becomes important. So I will divide, I'll take 2 to 3 minutes on each issue, but I'll talk about the Fifth World Conference. Why is it needed? Answer also those who are trying to work against that it should not be there. There is a resistance, not only from other forces, there is a resistance from women's groups also. There is a resistance within the United Nations itself, and there is a resistance from the other I will call it. So there are many forces, many groups, many areas from where there is a resistance. Right? 5 minutes more?
No, I was raising my hand to ask a question.
I will answer. Okay, I'll answer your question. I'll be very happy to do that. So in 2000, we were expecting that 5 years, okay, the conference should take place. But our American friends, sisters, they said, Pam, no, don't raise this issue. We have conservative government, right? At that time, Bush was the president of the United States. We don't want these forces because the fear has been 2000 or 2005 or 2010 or 2017. What we have told is, and the fear is, that Beijing should not be renegotiated. According to them, we realized women's rights in Beijing, right? Some rights in Cairo, ICPD, and they were repeated in Beijing. So we got women's human rights in Beijing, because by that time it was said women's rights are human rights, okay? The sexual reproductive rights are women's human rights. So all these gains, they said, okay, if Beijing is renegotiated, we are gone. They have been fearing that there is going to be a backlash. Also the argument came, so many conferences, right? So there is a fatigue of the conferences, right? All these arguments have been put, and let me say straight away. One, we all stand to say that Beijing neither shall be renegotiated nor can be renegotiated. I'm using consciously these words, right? Because once something has been agreed to, and the person of the president of the Security Council who was responsible for getting the peace resolution on 1325, right? The president was responsible, Anwar Haq Chaudhry, ambassador from Bangladesh. He's on record to say, there's a piece written by him, that once such international, especially human rights agreements are there, instruments are there, they cannot be done away with, they cannot be wished away with. So it cannot be. So it's a kind of a false propaganda that is being carried on, right? And the second part is, will we allow such things to be renegotiated? If we have fought so far, we shall fight again. We shall never there can never be retracing of these steps. And there lies the strength of the global women's movement, and that we shall see to it that the gains of Beijing are not. But the question is, as I said, shall there be a full stop? Number one. Is Beijing the ultimate? No. Beijing is not the ultimate. There is no full stop for that matter. One, they keep on, doing after every 5 years reviews. Review is something separate, right? And I remember, and I want to say, when the Millennium Development Goals were adopted, in the direction and the vision of all the countries, their eyes were on the Millennium Development Goals. They just forgot about Beijing Platform for Action. Only when the CSW event would take place and an issue would be taken, then they will just bring out something. Even our own country brought out beautifully earlier, but later on no reports were being brought out. So lip service was being paid, and now the lip service will be paid to the Sustainable Development Goals, not really to Beijing and CEDAW. Having said that, so the question is, when the Beijing happened, there is a new generation that has come out. The young people have come out, and they were not there then. Their concern. 1995 and 2018 now, right? There is a generation almost. So we have, as we talk about intergenerational change, as we have to pass on the baton to the new generation, we have to listen to what are their concerns, what are their voices. So that is one. And the other is that there are many issues which were not there at that time. They have cropped up at that time. And particularly we talk about so much about, intersectionality, diversity. Who was talking at that time about the diverse women? And who was talking about the marginalized women? Who was talking at that time about if we talk about India, the Dalit women or the indigenous women? Their voices are not there. So the voices of youth are not there, the diverse voices are not there, and we have to see to it that how their voices, get reflected. And this whole thing that if we push something, Beijing will be, dumb. Many exercises have been done. Time wouldn't permit me to share with you the details of the discussions, like organization EVIT that did it, inviting all over the world the suggestion. But what I want to say is that it is time that we have the Fifth World Conference. If not now, when? That is the question. If not we, then who? Because we owe it to the younger generation. So we have to facilitate the convening of the Fifth World Conference, a place where youth, adolescents can have, a platform to speak out what they want, what is the world that they want. We keep on saying, the world we want. Who are these we? Right? It is not you and me. We have to take care of these people also. What is the world they want? We have to talk about it. And friends, keeping in mind the time factor, let me quickly come to the last point. And that is that we have been, as we talk about intergenerational dialogue and passing on the baton to the new generation, the question is, where should it be held, right? I wish, Jean, we were able to convince the organizers of this event, because we are, betting for India to be the venue. This should have been a plenary session in this conference, right? Everyone should know about people from other countries as well as people from this country, why India should be, the country for this. Now, I feel why India should be a country, there are many reasons for that, and one, of course, certainly reason is that India is a country which has the second largest female population. If there are 7.6 billion population of the world, right, 1.35 billion are in India, and half of that population is that of women. So next to China, India has the largest female population, so that is what is the claim. And the second, of course, is that India, because we are talking about youth, we are talking about the next generation, and if I were to quote the statistics, half of the population of India is below 25 years. India's half of the population is below 25 years, and 2/3 is less than 35 years. Right? So by 2030, when you are trying to have the Sustainable Development Goals, India will be the youngest nation. And by 2027, India will have the largest workforce ready for that. Right? If that is that, certainly India is the place where such a conference should be held. And also I feel, apart from this, that India has very strong women's movements. I'm using the word movements. Not only movement, but movements. Because indigenous women have their own movement, the minority have their own, the Dalit have their own, the diverse section. So you are here in India for 4 or 5 days, I wish you could stay for longer, right? Meet these various groups who are struggling, who are having their own issues, for which they are betting. So India has a diverse population. India has very strong women's movement for that matter. And also I would say India has another unique character. Only if you were to bring them together, India has 1.4 million women elected to the grassroots levels of democracy. That's what we call as village councils and municipal bodies. 1.4 million women are elected, and the number is going to increase because now in all these bodies, the 50% representation is going to be there. And of course, these days our judiciary is under little this thing, but judiciary is one which has given recently very important judgment with regard to women's rights. Time again will not permit me today, but that doesn't mean to say that gender equality has been achieved in India, that everything is so this thing. All the more reason when gender equality, as Jean told you, I chaired the Government of India High Level Committee on the Status of Women. We have brought 3 volumes of our report on the status of women. And when we were thinking, struggling with what should be the title of this report, right? I was telling them 1 century more. To realize equality, 1 century more. And I was surprised later on as this World Economic Forum Davos took place, Global World Fund, where the president of the IMF, right, International Monetary Fund, she has used the same words that to realize gender parity, especially in economic participation, it will take another 100+ years, and now probably the years are increasing. Whatever this thing, we know there are issues. The 12 critical areas were laid down, but first is poverty. Have you been able to do away with poverty? In the world, we know there is feminization of poverty. There is issue of violence. Have we been able to do away with violence? It is increasing. It may be India, it may be any other country for that matter. What I am saying is that even those issues which have been recognized during the Beijing, right, we have not been able to realize those very, actions that were sought over there. So finally I come to this. One is, there are plus and minuses on both the sides, but certainly what is really needed is that there is unfinished agenda. I want to use the word unfinished humanist agenda. I am going beyond that, because in one of my books, the chapter is titled as, to be a feminist, to be a humanist, you have to be a feminist. Right? To be a humanist, you have to be a feminist. So our feminist agenda, right, it has to be taken forward. There is an unfinished agenda, and there is not a better time than this when the move is there, Me Too, right, Women's March, and the 1 billion rising naturally. So there are movements for women's rights locally, nationally, and internationally, and also a realization that there are many issues that were not there in the Beijing, they are there. Many voices they were not there. We have to listen, we have to provide for that, and times are never the same. 1995 cannot be, the 21st century. So 21st century has an agenda, and as I was saying, that when we went to Beijing, right, before going to Beijing, we had a song composed, right, and that song was Hum Honge Kamyab in Hindi. We will overcome, right? In India, it was translated in all the regional languages that we shall overcome. And in 2000, when I was speaking in the General Assembly, I said, I was wondering, when will this time come when we will say, we have overcome, right? That time has not come, but certainly time has come when we have to say, it is possible, and let us make it possible to have the 5th World Conference. And the last word is, if not now, when? If not we, then who? With these words, I thank you again. I have taken more time, but there are 2-3 minutes for the question that I get. Thank you very much. Yeah. Your question, dear.
Thanks for the presentation. I had a couple of questions. First, why did it stop after the 4th conference? What was the reason that we have not had it? And then you mentioned that there are some forces which are against it. So I just wanted to get an idea of what's the resistance, right? I mean, this is critical, critically important to have a conference, especially United Nations, when you have adopted the Millennium Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, where poverty, education, equality is such a critical part. Why is there a resistance to have a conference?
Well, the resistance from the women's groups, right? Some of the women's groups is with regard to that once we open it, it is quite possible that what has already been negotiated, it may be diluted. The fear is in 2000, right? This is the experience I'm sharing. There was a very sustained effort by the Catholics. In UN, it's very interesting. The people from Rome, the people from Iran, people from Saudi Arabia, see, otherwise they are apart religion-wise, but on women's issues they all got together. There is a partnership over there. So they were all there to see, because this was a special session of the General Assembly on further action, whatever is required. So they were fearful and they were wanting to dilute our rights. There was a concerted effort. I remember still, do we have 2 minutes or the organizers?
Yes, we have time.
Only 2 minutes.
Fine. Total
There's
fine.
nobody behind us.
Total fine. Yeah, you can stop recording after that.
Yeah, that's okay.
No problem.
It's just
You can
question
stop
and
recording,
answer.
we can keep talking.
Yes.
So, what I want to tell you, I was member of the NGO International NGO Working Group looking after this thing. These people recruited their cadre to come to New York, right? They were all wearing those grey, they wear. They were recruited. Any literature that we will distribute, right, they will pick up and put it in the dustbin. Every day they will come out with a newsletter opposing our rights. Such serious things were going on. And these youth caucus that was there, Jean, they used to hold their meetings. So knowing that these people are trying, to see what they are discussing, the woman who is now chief of the AVID, right? That time she was with us as a young participant. So sometimes they will hold the meeting in the chapel in the church center, somewhere there. Now, one of these people, I'm sharing with you the experience. This young girl was surrounded by these people who were wearing those. And they were having their beads in the hand. Are you Indian?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. तो जैसे कोई टूना करना होता है ना, like उसके ऊपर कुछ ऐसे करना, they're all surrounded her by like that. She was so nervous. Then finally we had to report to the UN, and after that the marshals were kept over, said that we are not harassed. So they strategized everything in 2009. So these women, one is the political environment, the conservative forces. But the question is, we have not been able to stop those conservative forces. As of today, we have more of fundamentalism, more of militarism, what not affecting. So it is time that we collectively raise our voice. It is time that we ask for the Fifth World Conference. But rest of the discussion, over a cup of tea outside we can.
Yeah, I would love that, yes.
I'll be very happy. And
sorry, I don't have any questions. I just would like to know the date is different from this and that. I'm confused for this.
Can you speak a little louder?
So I mean, the date written in this.
The date on the pin is correct. This is the one on this board is not correct. It doesn't
This
have
is
the right
22?
information. Yes.
2022.
22.
You are also from India?
I'm from Nepal. Sorry.
Nepal, you can understand. Namaskar.
Yeah.
Namaste. 2022, 20-22 में.
So it doesn't matter to distribute this. It is
Yes.
written 2020.
Yes.
2022.
2020,
This doesn't matter. This
Forget
is
about
error
this.
just on the
Forget
computer.
about this.
Yeah.
We said 2022 इसलिए
You will be
because in
delighted.
2020 the UN will be celebrating 25 years of Beijing. We didn't want, clash with that. And officially also time is needed to the resolutions to be passed and the arrangements to be. So 2022 is the safest, and and we have to final word sentence. I'm closing with a request. Wherever you are, whichever country you are, kindly build a momentum for the demand of the Fifth World Conference, especially among the young people, because it is young people's voices, it is young people's spaces that we want to support. Thank you very much.
Give me group photo now and group photo. Yeah.
We can have a group photo.
वो पीछे है.
वो हमारे वाले से भी
Wait,
खेलेंगे?
wait.
He knows.
Just wait.
Thank you.
That one.
Thank you so much.